There's something eerily human about finding lost things, relics of other lives left behind and buried in forgotten places. And so it was with the tape. It lay dormant for decades in the basement, a dusty rectangle labeled only with the word Confessions, written in smeared dark ink. No name, no date. Whoever left it clearly had a reason to keep it hidden. But now, it was here, exposed in the light, with its secrets waiting to be heard. The cassette felt heavy in hand, heavier than a piece of plastic had any right to feel. Pressing play was a risk, a pact with whatever story lay within. I held my breath, and the cassette whirred to life, filling the air with the sound of a woman's strained voice, trembling yet defiant. "Is this on?" she began, her voice cutting through the low hum of the tape with a fragile uncertainty. "Can anyone hear me?" There was a pause, a shift in her tone as if searching for resolve. "I don't know who will listen to this. Maybe no one should. But if you're here, well, it's too late now." A pause followed, heavy with the weight of her secrets. There was a faint crackling in the background, like distant thunder, or perhaps the sharp, uncomfortable sound of pages turning. "They thought I was mad, you know," she continued, her voice laced with bitterness and a touch of thrill. "But soon, they'll see. You'll see." Her voice lowered as she recalled a memory, her tone becoming softer, almost tender. "I was always a curious child, maybe too curious for my own good," she mused, her words laced with nostalgia. "One summer I was exploring my grandmother's attic. You know the kind of place. Dust and cobwebs draped over forgotten trinkets. And that's when I found it. A book wrapped in cracked leather, hidden under piles of old blankets. The words inside were written in a language I didn't understand, but something drew me to them." She spoke of the night she tried her first spell, describing the small flame of a candle flickering in her darkened bedroom, casting long, stretching shadows across the walls. It was just a whisper, a single line spoken over the flame, a pinch of salt, and the room felt different, she said. Her voice dropped, filled with something akin to reverence. I swear the shadows shifted. They moved like they were alive, like they were listening. The thrill in her voice was unmistakable, but so was the undercurrent of dread. She was caught in a web, unable to resist the power she was tapping into. Her curiosity, and her tone grew darker as she described how her powers developed. "I realized I could make things happen, as if bending the world to my will," she said, her voice now a careful blend of pride and terror. "A whisper could call the wind. A flick of my fingers could extinguish a flame. Even the shards of a broken mirror could be made to dance, to obey." But soon, her tone shifted again, filled with unease. But it was never enough. It needed more. I could feel it, like a hunger gnawing at the edges of my mind. I started seeing things in the corners of my vision. Shadows darker than night, shapes I couldn't quite make out, and whispers. The tension in her voice was palpable, as if reliving the memory of something she both craved and feared. Every time I used the power, it asked for more. Just a little drop of blood here, a small offering there. At first it was my own, but each time I felt something slipping away, a piece of myself that I couldn't get back. The realization settled in her voice, thick with regret. She had opened a door that couldn't be closed, and each sacrifice pulled her deeper into a world where shadows were sentient, where whispers haunted her dreams. With a trembling breath, she recounted the night it first demanded blood, a ritual under the moonlight, where she drew a thin line across her palm and let the drops fall into a circle of salt. "The moment my blood touched the ground," she whispered, "the shadows came alive. They circled me as if feeding on the offering, their forms stretching, shifting, bending around me in a twisted embrace." She paused, the memory clearly painful, her voice faltering. Each time, it took a part of me. Small things like my reflection in the mirror, which grew fainter, or the way my shadow twisted strangely under the moonlight. There was an edge of desperation now, as if she were pleading with the listener to understand. Every spell I cast seemed to strip something else away. I wasn't just losing my reflection. I was losing myself. One night, as she slept, the whispers turned into a voice, a dark, smooth voice calling her name. She awoke to find a figure at the edge of her bed, pale and intangible, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. It didn't have a face. Not really, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was like looking into a fog. But those eyes, they stared right through me, like it could see every secret I'd ever hidden, every fear I'd tried to bury. Her voice cracked as she continued. I told it to leave. I begged it, but it just watched me, that sickly, knowing grin stretching across whatever counted as its face. Her tone turned haunted. I knew then that I was nothing more than a tool, a pawn in whatever dark game it was playing. She spoke of waking up drenched in cold sweat, the taste of iron on her lips, the faint bruises on her arms as though something had held her down. I was marked, she said softly. It wouldn't let me go. Not now. Not ever. Her final words came out in ragged breaths, her voice barely recognizable, trembling with despair and resignation. If you're listening to this, don't look for me. Destroy this tape. Burn it. It's too late for me, but it doesn't have to be for you. Don't make the same mistake. And then silence. The tape ended, but the weight of her story lingered, like a dark cloud pressing down, a silent warning etched into the very air around me. Had she vanished into the shadows she had summoned, claimed by the power she once thought she could control? Or was she still out there, bound to whatever entity she had summoned? As I sat in the dark, the shadows around me seemed to stretch just a little farther than before.